When I was a kid, I was really into Shazam and Captain Marvel. He was called Captain Marvel back then, before all the legal aspects came into play. I was Team Shazam over Team Superman. I since became a Superman fan since Richard Donner and John Byrne took over the property. But back then, it was all about Shazam, Captain Marvel. I laid all that out in a previous video. You can check out Prepping for Shazam. So I'm just now leaving the theater. I saw the movie. Now, let me just say, I knew going in that this Captain Marvel, or this Shazam, he's not Captain Marvel anymore, but I knew that this character was completely rejiggered from the Captain Marvel that I used to read and watch on Saturday morning TV, because this character is now a child. Well, he's 16, I think. He's a teenager in an adult body when he transforms into the superhero. Can't call him Shazam, and we can't call him Captain Marvel, so I'll just call him the superhero. I went in accepting that, and I'll say that Zachary Levi, or Levy, however you pronounce his name, he does a pretty decent job playing an adult with a teenage mentality. He's got, he does all the mannerisms. He has all of the lingo and all of the dynamics down pat. Except for one thing, he had this really he would do this really goofy look. It was something like, I don't know what that was. In a fight scene with him and Savannah, he made that goofy look. It cracked me up every time. Outside of that, like I say, his performance was decent. I mean, there was sometimes I could see him acting with some of his facial expressions, but I'm not going to pick on that too much. It was decent. I thought the actor playing Billy Batson did a much better job. I found that actor to be more convincing, is that the word, or more interesting to watch than I did to see the superhero when the superhero was on screen. It's interesting that when Billy Batson turns into Shazam, it seems like as Shazam, with Billy Batson's mind, he's more juvenile than he is when he's Billy Batson. I put that on the director, not on Zachary Levi. It's not a spoiler to know that Billy Batson lives in a foster home because, for whatever reason, his parents are no longer in his life. And there's a scene about midway through the movie, probably right at the end of the second act, where that kind of comes to a head. And I thought that scene, wow, the gravitas of that scene, I really thought, okay, that says something to me. I just wish more of that tone was in the movie. This movie really was like Big, the Tom Hanks film, or a Freaky Friday, like the original with I guess Tatum O'Neal, or the remake with Jamie Lee Curtis. It really struck that type of tone throughout most of the film, and I wish it had of kind of more relied on that serious tone. Not serious, but a little bit more like there were more stakes involved in the character of Billy Batson. The main issue I had with this movie was that it just seemed so confined. I mean, it just seemed, there weren't any stakes here. The thing that I didn't get, and maybe I missed this in the reworking in the books, was this was not the Savannah character that I knew at all. The Savannah character that I was familiar with was more like a mad scientist Lex Luthor type, whereas this character was more of well, to be frank, it seems like to me they've already done Black Adam with this Savannah character as they reimagined this character. They took a lot of liberties with Savannah. They reimagined the 7 deadly sin statues, which was different from what I'm aware of. And it's okay that they reimagined it. If that's what they did in the books, fine. But I don't know if what they did with the 7 deadly sins was anything that was compelling to me at all. Savannah's motivation throughout the whole movie didn't make a lot of sense to me. And these might be mild spoilers, but basically you've got Savannah as a kid at the beginning of the movie who is bullied by his own family, and he is given a test by the great wizard Shazam. Jaimin Hansu, who is terribly miscast, looks hilarious in the makeup. It really is really horrible. But he fails the test by Shazam as he's deemed not worthy. But prior to the test, in a scene with his older brother and his father, he seems like a pure innocent, completely victimized by his own family. But then during this test, the screenplay has in it that this character is unworthy. And I'm not going to say anything more about that. But then as the movie progresses and we see a grown Sivana, who for some reason looks nearly the same age as his dad. His dad didn't age at all. His older brother does, but his dad seems to be the same age. We see a Sivana who seems to have, and this is a mild spoiler, he seems to have the same power set as Shazam, or the superhero. And yet, the adult Sivana throughout the whole film spends, his only motivation is he demands that, I'm going to call him Shazam. He demands that Shazam give him Shazam's powers. So he's kind of he still wants those powers that the wizards say he wasn't worthy to have. Yet we see him performing all of the abilities that Shazam does. It kind of nullifies any motivation that Sivana had. Now, despite the changes to Sivana, I did think the casting of Mark Strong was rather brilliant. I thought he physically looked the part, and I also knew what the director was going for. You know, you can juxtapose Sivana with Billy Batson. They are both in search of a family. To a certain degree, they both rejected their families initially, although Billy grew to love his family, and he accepted them. And I guess that's what made him a hero, whereas Sivana went the opposite route. In a somewhat graphic scene, just a warning that if you take young kids to this, they might, I don't know, it might be a little offsetting to them, or off-putting to them. But that is to say, I get it. I understand it. It would have been nice if they had done more. The story just needed to be a little bigger to me. Very small, very contained, and I just didn't get a sense that the stakes were that high. I'm going to do my Shazam serious face again. Another very mild spoiler. I didn't understand that there's a portion of the film, like in the second act, midway through, where Freddie Freeman, is that his name? Freemore? He's the guy, the kid who walks with a crutch. He tries to lecture to Shazam about Shazam not being a hero or acting like a bully and being selfish. And I'm like, huh? This is the same kid who basically wanted to use Shazam to make his schoolmates like him, and also wanted to exploit Shazam to beat up some guys who were bullying him. And the first time that Shazam does save a woman, it doesn't really go the way it was, way he thought it was going to go, which was kind of like I think it was kind of that whole scene was a nod to the Me Too movement, which is fine. But that just seemed a little inconsistent in character for Freddy's character. I thought I saw a lot of nods and homages to other properties. Well, clearly there were. I mean, I don't want to spoil a big last-minute cameo. It was almost like a commercial within the film for all these other characters. And then during the credit sequence, it was like they were kind of dumping on all these other characters, I mean, making light of them, which was, I don't know, it was kind of funny, but a little head-scratching. You know, there were nods to Superman 2, Kneel Before Zod. There were nods to Man of Steel, where we see a lot of flying through the air while punching the opponent. Speaking of that, I will say this, some of the flying shots were really well done. There's a scene in a mall, and this takes place in Philadelphia, where I currently reside. But, and yeah, I noticed a lot of the locations. It was pretty cool. But there were some shots that were masterfully done, particularly this one in a mall where Sivana and Shazam have a fight. There's a bus sequence that has a little bit of the flavor of the original Superman, Richard Donner, back in 1978. if you think about the sequence with where Superman rescues Lois Lane from the helicopter in that movie. And unfortunately, I don't know if this was a little bit of a troll, but there is a scene, if you remember that classic film, the 1978 Superman, where you get the brother talking about, "Whoa, that's a bad outfit." Well, we have something very similar to that in this film, and I give it a little bit of a side eye. It was a little corny, but whatever. There's another scene which I'm going to be very delicate with because I don't want to ruin the surprise, even though the surprise was ruined for me. Thanks again, Afro Nerd. Okay. But there's a scene in the movie where Billy Batson's adopted family, they play a major part in the story. And I won't say anything more than that other than what was meant to be triumphant and heroic and a huge reveal just looked really silly to me, with the exception of one of the characters. I'll just say this. One of the characters, who was an African-American female, she came off well. The others just looked really ridiculous to me. And this is a mild spoiler, so stop it here if you don't want to hear this. I'll be delicate, though. I'll just say that the costume that Zachary Levi wears in this, I got used to him wearing it despite the ridiculous padding on it. But others in the costume didn't fare as well. With the exception, again, of said African-American, hot as hell female. The scene, I'm sure it'll be, it'll probably be what most people point to as the best part of the movie, puts it over the top. But to me, it kind of came off as, I hate to say, kind of silly, and it diminished the main character, Shazam, in my opinion. They hint at certain characters, or we see in the periphery certain characters in the Shazam mythos that, you know, kind of sparked my juices in terms of remembering what I loved about it as a kid. Unfortunately, those characters were very juvenile, so they didn't really, I mean, other than a visceral, like, oh, I remember that. But given that they, you know, show us some of those sillier characters from the comic, from the old school comic book, I was disappointed that one of my favorite characters as a kid reading Shazam was only alluded to in the carnival scenes, which take place at the beginning in the flashback and in the middle in the flashback, involving a stuffed tiger. A character that I was like, well, hey, if I can see this character, then why can't I see that character? But that's just a nitpick. My last criticism of the film is that the director of photography is not going to win any awards for this movie. It's shot except for some of the flying sequences, it's shot very flat. The lighting is not very interesting. It's flat. It looks kind of like a TV movie in some degrees, in some aspects. There are some scenes, like I say, the battle scenes in the air, pretty impressive. But just like the regular scenes where there's no action per se, where we see Shazam, you know, testing his powers, or just some of the street scenes, some of the non-CGI scenes, let's put it that way. Not very impressive at all. So let me sum this up. Your kids will love the film. Your kids will love it. And I read an article where the director said he doesn't apologize, or he outright acknowledges that this is a kid's movie that adults will like. And it comes off like that. I think they had the elements of a great film. It could have been, you know, I think it could have been along the lines of that 1978 Superman, which was a great film, great story. But to me, this film chose to play it small. They do a good job of accessing all of that, all the drama involved with the foster program and a child, you know, living without his parents, in search of his parents, wish fulfillment. You know, if you could become, like, as a kid, I used to love to pretend I was a $6 million man, and Again, I love Shazam. I wished I could say Shazam and turn into a superpowered being, you know. Still do. But, so, all those elements were there, but it's just, you know, it's like, I don't know, they didn't gel because it was such a small scope. One note, it was pretty cool seeing my man from, I forget his name, but the guy who plays in The Walking Dead. The big guy, I think he's Asian, of Asian descent. He plays the foster dad in this film. He plays the foster dad in this film, and that was pretty cool seeing him. He's a really good actor. I really liked him. But I think I can only give this 2.5 reels. That falls between 2 reels being fair, 3 reels being good. So 2.5 reels. You know, definitely go take your kids to see it. But, you know, I thought it was kind of lightweight, to be honest. And I'll repeat again, there is one scene where Billy goes in search of his parents that I thought spoke to, wow, this could have played a little bit more between drama and comedy. But I think it chose mostly to go for the comedy. But go check it out. Tell me what you think. Leave your comments below. And with that, we're at the martini.